Hey, Erick here, Courageous Conviction. It's a weekend again. Jeff's out camping with his family, which is great. And so we didn't get a chance to record together. I'm going to put up a couple videos until he and I get a chance to record together. And today I want to talk a little bit about, sometimes we stumble along the way. And even, once we decide to come back and our conviction is solid that we want to come back, we can still find ourselves stumbling. Even after we're back a while, it's interesting because you notice new members will come into the church. They're excited about things. Their spiritual life has changed a lot. They're excited about it. And it's new to them. But after about 2 years, you start to see this apathy set in. It's like anybody gets a new calling too, usually, right? I mean, before you used to see everybody go gung-ho, then after about a year or 2 years, apathy set in. And that's kind of why the church kind of has a policy, that 2 or 3 years in a calling and change them out. Generally. Not necessarily for bishops or anything else. But that apathy comes no matter what we're doing. We could be involved in our favorite hobby. But what happened to us is that after we get involved and we're doing it all the time, it just becomes not as exciting. It's kind of like it loses dynamics, right? And it's like music. You hear a good song. I heard this in a book I read years ago by Robert Piercing. And it was basically, he was a quantum physicist. And he told this story about quality and what quality is. And I think it could relate to why we sometimes will kind of get burnout or we'll stumble along that way, right? We'll fall back maybe and into, maybe not into the sins that we were in, but we'll start to fall back towards those ways, towards that path sometimes. It's the default path, right? It's the line of least resistance, what we know. It's where we ran to when we were comfortable before. Even though we hated it and we didn't like it and we wanted to leave it, it's just that insane natural human instinct for us to want to jump back and go back to what we had control of, or at least somehow found some sort of satisfaction, or our ego was satisfied, or whatever we're missing right now that causes us to look back or to stumble along the way. It's very common for most people. It's like you look at relationships and you think, wow, man, I want that perfect marriage. Well, there's very few people that have that perfect marriage. Most of them have to work at that marriage almost on a daily basis, right? To some degree or another. And others' relationships are good, much better off than some, right? Going back to Robert Piercing. He's talking about music. And he was relating a song he was dancing to. And he remembered when that song came out. It's like any song when it first comes out. And I'll just relate this. When it first comes out, it's very dynamic. It has something to it that you want to hear it and listen to it over and over and over and over and over again. You can't get enough of it. Then after a few months, you don't listen to as much. New music comes out. You like another song too. You still like this one. Still got quality, but it's not in number one spot, right? It's not the number one priority. Now that music can go back to years ago. We can go back and find 50s music, 60s music, 70s, 80s music that's still good music. But it doesn't have the same dynamics when it was new and it first came out, right? Does that make sense? So it loses dynamics. It becomes static, if you will. That happens to us too, and that's apathy. That's when apathy sets in. We can have the most burning testimony, and after a while, apathy is going to set in. We get used to having that, right? We get used to having, I've told my daughter the other day, you're going to grow up in an era where you're going to be used to going into McDonald's or to Walmart's, and you're going to have robots go and get things for you, or you're going to order robots or command robots in your vehicles to do and tell you what you want from them, and they're going to serve you. We never imagined that. That was so sci-fi for us, right? But then again, I told my daughter too that you'll never taste freedom like I tasted. I'm the end of the baby boomers. I'm 59 years old. Coming up through the 80s was probably the pinnacle of freedom in the world. Yeah, there was wars and rumors of war still. But in the 80s, especially during the Reagan administration, when the Berlin Wall falls, you have that lapse of freedom that just that pervades all the world for a minute. And then you had this double up on coming back and implementing a new type of Marxism. My point being in this, we can get burnout and stumble even if our desires are sincere, even if the Lord confirmed it. So we shouldn't doubt the fact the Lord already confirmed that to us once. We don't have to go back to the Lord again and say, hey, I thought I was supposed to do this. Am I? Yeah, there's times, we've gone through some really rough times, especially on the road back, my wife and I. And there's some times that I thought, did I make the right choice here? Did I really get the answer from the Lord? And I started to weigh out all the options, and I think, oh, no, this is the answer. This is the answer the Lord wants. There is no other way. There's a girl I work with named Emma. And she's native down in Ecuador. And she always had this saying that she'd say to me, there is no other way. And she's right. There is no other way. The gospel of Jesus Christ, especially the restored gospel of Jesus Christ that we find on the earth today, is the only way. No matter what confusion right now is going on. We're just listening to my mother, a talk from Elder Christofferson only about 7 years ago, when he talked about the freedom and the freedoms we need to defend, how we need to defend those freedoms, because if not, we're not going to have religious freedom anymore. And it is eroding. And so the church hasn't changed its stance on any of this. Some people lose their testimonies over this. Hey, I'm frustrated with it. I don't like to see this, because I really get sometimes frustrated in the arrogance of some of the leadership that they think that they're actually, superior, doing something better by talking and going into these misleading vernacular. And that's not my point I want to talk about. So I get frustrated at that. That's what I'm trying to say. I have my frustrations at church too. But if I don't go, what do I teach my children? This is a confusing time right now. And there's been days that I haven't wanted to go. There's been days I didn't go. There's been days that I got up and just cordially walked out of sacrament meeting because the speech was basically, it could have been written by the World Economic Forum, delivered to church. It's sad for me to see a woman who was so conservative now all of a sudden become more liberal because she thinks that's what she's supposed to do. Look, I'm just saying that apathy sets in. We have to renew it. That's why we renew our covenant every week, right? We got to renew that. And so in that renew that covenant, we need to find something in that sacrament that reignites our excitement too about what we're doing, about being a disciple of Jesus Christ. This podcast for me, I always said as far as podcast is therapeutic because I'm able to talk with Jeff and we're able to talk about things. Now, Jeff and I are a little bit different in the way we see things. He's always a little softer. I'm a little more black and white. But Jeff and I always find that common ground that we can work on. And that's the objective. But if there's no common ground, there is no ground to work on. And that is going to be a problem going forward and cause even more division in the church. So that's why I wanted to say this, that people are going to stumble. It's going to be difficult. And I will repeat this. The way is the covenant path. And you clean that covenant path right now through the Book of Mormon. That's going to be what you're clinging to that's going to keep you connected to the iron rod. That's that rope that's going to actually tie you onto that iron rod where it's going to hold you there, right? The Book of Mormon. It's true writ. And I'm excited that in just a few short weeks that once we wrap some things up here, still preparing things down in Latin America, that we are going to go down and do some of these interviews. And we're going to go and visit some sites and do some filming for our Book of Mormon tours. So if you want to know more information, you like this information, you like what we're talking about, Jeff and I, what we do is, look, we study. You've seen that always when we talk about this. We've studied for years. Jeff set out to study every day, everything against the church. So he really gets the anti-side. And yet he's able to come back. And nobody else with him did. Nobody came back with me either. My friends that left, that we went down together, that cliff and that river, they got swept away. The world took them. I'm grateful to be back. I'm far from perfect, far from perfect. I just have a knowledge of what worked and what didn't work. And that as an executive and through all this continued education I've done throughout my whole life, I've been able to be educated by some really good people and have hands-on education experience when I was a CEO and able to see through and work with governments in foreign countries and so forth. So I know the corruption's there, and I have no doubt in that. So when I know the corruption's there, it's easier for me to say, okay, it's just there's corruption there, there's misleading going on, and there's deception going on, but the Lord will correct all that. So I guess maybe that's easier for me to see that, for Jeff too. And so living outside the U.S. for so many years, we are able to see things differently, right, and see through things. That gives us a really solid testimony in the fact that, hey, I get offended. I moved back here, and I got treated like, I felt like I just got treated like I was nothing. I just like, who are you? Well, who are you? Because I'm originally from here. I don't know any of you people. But I was gone 20 years, almost 18 and a half years. And outside of my mission time in Brazil. Well, that's what I want to talk about today, that sometimes we stumble. And you can be a bishop, a stake president. You can be a mission president. And find apathy in your life and just kind of hit a wall. You just got to renew it. It's like in our relationships. We just have to renew them and keep love alive. We recreate love. And that's what recreate means, is recreate. We recreate it. We take a break for a minute and we recreate it. We recreate. And then we recreate in ourselves that desire for our scripture reading. Oh, check ourselves. Are we doing our prayers? Are we paying our tithing? Are we fasting? That's been something I've had to struggle with ever since I had COVID. I had a really good fast schedule. And it was more than once a month, so I'm going to say. And I felt good about it. It wasn't too much. I'll be honest with you. I did twice a month, okay? And I was really on discipline on that. Since I got COVID, this has been a little while back, I've had a really hard time desiring to fast. I don't know why. But it's been tough for me. And so those are things that we got to stop and go, okay, where did Ammon and his brethren, where did Alma the younger, when they all met up, what was it that gave them all that strength? Well, they read the scripture diligently. They sought out to have understanding first. So they educated themselves what they had to. They sought to have the Spirit with them. They fasted to have discipline, and they worked hard. They lived the principle of hard work, right? And they dedicated their lives to putting the Lord first. Well, we do those, then we'll get ourselves back on track again. We reignite ourselves. We take out the apathy. And we repent and we keep going. That's what it means to endure to the end. So if you've fallen, if you stumble, that's normal. That's going to happen. Some people confess it, and some people just try to hide it. But pretty much all of them do it. We all fall and stumble in that process of perfection. DeFi IoT, do us a favor. Hit that like button, the thumbs up down below there. Subscribe. Hit the subscribe, and then hit the bell so when you get our notifications. And send this out to other people, all your friends, please. What we're trying to do is, Jeff and I just relate our experiences to keep people on the path of Christ and on the covenant path especially. We went out there, way out there. I'm going to go down, and I'm going to do an interview with my former chauffeur. He was my driver. And he is going to tell the stories of some of the things we did. Now, I'm going to obviously have to edit some of this stuff because I don't want all my sins out there. But I'm going to interview him because he's going to tell us the truth of Costa Rica and what this migration is doing in Costa Rica. He's a guy that was always really connected on the streets. You know how a king always kind of has his jester, right? And kind of plays both sides. He was on the streets, and then you had my driver was that jester. Now, I called him up thinking, I want the dirt, man. I know you can take it back to the dirt. And he was one of those guys that I had to eliminate from my life because he just kept wanting to show up and go out and party, right? He liked that lifestyle. He liked having my vehicles and so forth. And with me, it also showed something else. I was a foreigner. They think you have money, you got the U.S. passport, etc. But listen to this. He changed his life. I called him up and said, hey, man, hey, I haven't talked to you ever. It's great talking to you. He said, look, here's my house. He said, I haven't drinking. I haven't gone out and partied. It's been, I don't know, 3-4 years, maybe even 5 years. I don't remember. He was kind of telling me all these different stories. His mom passed away too. And my point being, this guy repented and changed his life. He was not a member of the church. Now, I'm going to go down and talk to him about that. Obviously, I didn't talk to him about it then because it wasn't that important to me. But now that he's made that change in his life and it's been a stable change and he loves it, he said to me, he says, hey, Eric, if you want to come back down here and go party and play, I mean, I'll drive you around, but I'm not going to do that anymore. I said, great. I don't do that anymore either, bud. I need to get some interviews, though. So can we go drum up some interviews? He said, yeah, we'll do that, but I'm not drinking or playing. I said, we're on, buddy. We're not, neither am I. Great to see it. If he can change, any of us can change. Trust me, because he was that guy lived and died every day his cocaine, right? He had a bad cocaine habit. I thought he was going to die, seriously. That's why I had to fire him as my driver, because he just couldn't control cocaine. He can change, anybody can. And all he told me, I said, how'd you do it? He said, I just decided that I had to change. I couldn't keep going on. I was going to die. It was a dead end road. I'm 53 years old right now. And I decided when I was like 48 or so, I want to go back and get my high school diploma. I never finished that. I'm going to keep going to school. And then some guy comes along that he's got this little travel business, tour company down there. And he says, hey, what are you doing? He gets to know him after. He says, hey, you know what, dude? You keep studying. Don't work. I'll pay for you right now every month. Pay your bills. You study. And he said, I was so blessed. God blessed me. And that's what happened to us. We make that choice, and we just make the choice. We decide. We decide if we're going to fast or we're not going to fast. We decide. And if we slip up, we just decide again, and we just get back on the horse, and we do it over and over and over and over again until we learn to stay on that horse. And we will. That's the promise. That's the power of the atonement. DeFi IoT. We'll see you in the next video.